The crew of El Faro had spent days watching Hurricane Joaquin grow stronger. Now the storm had finally caught them, and for the first time during the voyage, the danger was impossible to ignore. The Atlantic Ocean was no longer rough. It was violent. Massive waves slammed into the ship. Wind howled across the decks. Rain reduced visibility to almost nothing. Every movement on board became more difficult. Every task became more dangerous. And somewhere inside the darkness, Hurricane Joaquin continued growing stronger. By the early morning hours of October 1st, El Faro was operating in conditions few people on Earth will ever experience. The ship rose, dropped, twisted, shuddered. Tens of thousands of tons of steel were being thrown around by a force nobody could control. Yet even now, the crew wasn't preparing to abandon ship, because cargo ships are built to survive storms, and experienced sailors expect rough weather. The assumption was simple: ride it out, get through it, continue the voyage. But Hurricane Joaquin wasn't finished, not even close. At approximately 5 a.m., the situation began changing rapidly. Conditions on board were deteriorating. The ship was encountering increasingly severe seas, and critical decisions were being made on the bridge. Captain Michael Davidson and his officers were trying to navigate through one of the most powerful storms in the Atlantic. Every course adjustment mattered. Every weather update mattered. Every minute mattered. What nobody realized was how quickly the margin for survival was disappearing. One of the greatest dangers facing any cargo vessel during extreme weather isn't the wind. It's movement. Everything on board must remain exactly where it belongs. If cargo shifts, balance changes, stability changes, the ship begins behaving differently. And that is exactly what investigators later believed may have happened aboard El Faro. The vessel was carrying hundreds of containers and vehicles. Under normal conditions, securing that cargo is routine. Under hurricane conditions, nothing is routine. As waves battered the ship, concern began growing about stability. Then another problem appeared: water. Ships take water on deck all the time. That isn't unusual. The problem occurs when water starts reaching places it shouldn't. And aboard El Faro, reports began indicating water was becoming a serious concern. The crew wasn't dealing with one emergency. They were dealing with several. At the same time, the weather, the ship's stability, the cargo, the increasing violence of the sea. And then came a development that changed everything. El Faro lost propulsion. Suddenly, the ship's engines were no longer providing the power needed to maneuver effectively. That single failure transformed the entire situation. Before, the crew was fighting the storm. Now the storm was in control. Imagine driving through a blizzard. Now imagine your engine dies. That's the difference. Without propulsion, a ship becomes vulnerable. The captain loses options. The crew loses flexibility. And the ocean starts making decisions for you. The bridge immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation, because they understood something most people don't. A disabled ship inside a major hurricane is one of the most dangerous situations imaginable. Every minute without propulsion increased the risk. Every wave became more threatening. Every hour reduced the chance of recovery. Yet the crew kept working. Engineers fought to restore power. Officers monitored conditions. The bridge searched for solutions. Nobody gave up. Nobody stopped fighting. But Hurricane Joaquin continued delivering punishment, wave after wave, hour after hour. Then came one of the most chilling communications of the disaster: a satellite phone call from Captain Davidson. For years, the contents of that call would become one of the most important pieces of evidence investigators possessed, because it revealed what was happening aboard the ship in real time. Davidson reported that the vessel had developed a list: a dangerous lean to one side, approximately 15 degrees. That may not sound catastrophic. At sea, it absolutely can be, because a list often signals deeper problems involving cargo, stability, or flooding. The captain also reported that cargo had shifted. Suddenly, investigators had another crucial piece of the puzzle. The storm wasn't merely attacking the ship. The storm was changing the ship. Every shifted vehicle, every shifted trailer, every movement of weight affected stability. And stability was becoming critical. Meanwhile, conditions outside continued worsening. Winds exceeded hurricane force. Towering waves surrounded the vessel. Visibility was nearly non-existent. The crew was trapped inside a storm powerful enough to overwhelm even experienced mariners. Yet Davidson still believed recovery was possible. That's an important detail, because when people hear the story today, they often imagine everyone on board knew they were doomed. The evidence suggests otherwise. The crew was fighting. The captain was communicating. Engineers were working. They believed they still had a chance. And that's what makes the next developments so devastating. The situation continued deteriorating. Flooding concerns increased. The list worsened. Mechanical problems multiplied. The ship remained powerless. The hurricane remained relentless. Every issue made every other issue worse. Without propulsion, controlling the vessel became harder. Without control, the ship took more punishment. More punishment increased damage. More damage increased flooding. More flooding threatened stability. It was a chain reaction. And the crew was losing the race. Then came the message that would define the disaster. A distress call. The kind every sailor hopes never to make. The kind that means the situation has moved beyond routine emergency. The kind that means lives are now at risk. The words transmitted from El Faro painted a terrifying picture. The ship was disabled. Flooding was occurring. The list remained severe. And the crew needed help. The problem was location. El Faro wasn't near a harbor. It wasn't near rescue vessels. It wasn't near safety. It was inside a major hurricane, hundreds of miles from land. Even if rescuers launched immediately, reaching the ship would be incredibly difficult. The ocean had effectively isolated them, and Hurricane Joaquin was still growing. As morning continued, communication became increasingly difficult. Messages grew shorter. Information became harder to obtain. The storm interfered with everything. The crew continued fighting, but the situation continued slipping away. Investigators would later determine that this period represented the final chapter of El Faro's story. The ship was still afloat. The crew was still alive. But the window for recovery was rapidly closing. And then, the world heard something that should never happen. Silence. The transmissions stopped. The updates stopped. The communication stopped. A ship carrying 33 people had effectively disappeared inside a hurricane. At first, nobody knew exactly what had happened. Maybe communications had failed. Maybe power had been restored. Maybe the ship was still fighting. Maybe the crew was still alive. Nobody knew. For families waiting at home, the uncertainty was agonizing. For investigators, the mystery was only beginning. For the Coast Guard, a massive search operation was about to begin. And somewhere beneath Hurricane Joaquin, the truth remained hidden. Because in Part 3, search crews discover that El Faro is gone. Investigators launch one of the most complex maritime investigations in modern history. And nearly 3 miles beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a device is waiting to reveal exactly what happened during the ship's final hours. A device that recorded everything. If you want to hear the rest of the story, make sure you like and subscribe to catch the final episode.